Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting...
The greatest adventure is what lies ahead. Today and tomorrow are yet to be said. The chances, the changes are all yours to make. The mold of your life is in your hands to break. The greatest adventure is there if you're bold. Let go of the moment that life makes you hold. To measure the meaning can make you delay. It's time you stop thinking and wasting the day. The man who's a dreamer and never takes leave, who thinks of a world that is just make-believe, will never know passion, will never know pain, who sits by...
The greatest adventure is what lies ahead. Today, we're kicking off what I'm calling Frodovember. We're going to go through the primary works of Tolkien, at least the adapted works of Tolkien. We're not going to do the books because we don't have that kind of time. But we are going to do an episode each month, or each week of this month, talking about the primary works. And so today, we're kicking off Frodovember with The Hobbit. Specifically the 1977 Rankin Bass animated adaptation of that book. I'm very excited to be doing this because I'm a big Tolkien guy. This means a whole lot to me. And I'm very excited to have our guest back on the podcast from many prior appearances. You've heard him before talking about a Goofy movie and Calvin and Hobbes and many other fun subjects. Please welcome back to the show, Case Aiken.
Hey, Doug. Thank you for having me back on, especially for, I have to imagine people were fighting for all of the slots in this Frodovember section because I think those of us of our generation have a lot of love for this era. So thank you for letting me snatch this one.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm happy to have you on anytime, man. This one meant a lot to me. I'm glad I thought this would be the hardest one to fill. I'm sure, everybody loves the Peter Jackson movies, the Lord of the Rings ones. We could talk about the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies, and they're interesting but flawed. But this animated one from 1977 is pure and good. But before we get into that, tell the good folks out there about the awesome podcast you have and what you do.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, so for those of you who decide that they like me in this episode, they can check me out on my own shows. So I host two podcasts. One is Another Pass, which is a movie analysis show that I co-host with Sam Alisea. And the other is Men of Steel, which is a Superman and Superman-adjacent love letter that I co-host with J. Mike Folsom. And those are two shows that have been going really strong for a long time. You've been on both of them now. And it's just... Yeah, the really fun conversations that we're having there. And if you prefer your podcasts in a YouTube format, you can find both of them on the Certain POV Media YouTube channel, which is the channel for my podcast network that I run and put up all the content for. So those are the kinds of things I work on. I also do like D&D videos and stuff. So I'm a big nerd. That's
Frodovember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to check out the episodes I was on, I was thrilled to be on your show. On Men of Steel, I did an episode of Watchmen and another one on The Incredibles. And then on Another Pass, I dropped by to do Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So those are places to start. But yeah, both of your shows are awesome, and they're well worth everyone's time. So,
well, thank you very much.
Yeah, happy to plug them. So let's talk about The Hobbit. So tell me about your nostalgic memories of this film, and I'm sure you probably have some memories of the book as well.
Yeah. Okay. So starting off, this movie is my introduction to The Hobbit. It was I want to say Cartoon Network, but it might have been like TNT or something back in the day. It was on, and I caught it, and I was enthralled. It was in that my gateway into fantasy movies that were coming out. Like The Flight of Dragons was another movie that was kind of in that category. So I was exposed to the Hobbit cartoon when it aired, and I thought it was really cool. And then I had to read The Hobbit for high school, and I loved it. But I find this a pretty good adaptation of The Hobbit. I think that it is, it's got its quirks, it's got its critics. But I think it does a good job of getting all the story beats that you need to know about pretty well hammered in, and I've always I don't know, like I said, this was my introduction to the franchise, and so I always will have a soft spot for this movie. When the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies came out, this was in constant rotation. As the movies would be released on DVD, we would start watching with this Hobbit cartoon and then go into the Peter Jackson movies when we would do our marathon sessions of watching as much as had come out at the time of whenever we would do these watching cycles. So by the time Return of the King came out, we would do this like 4-movie sort of epic kind of crazy night, because when you're in college and the Peter Jackson movies are out and popular, you can get a bunch of people who are like, yeah, I don't feel like sleeping tonight.
Right.
And this was always a high watermark of the evening.
Yeah, and now that the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies exist, you can still start with the Rankin Bass one and
right.
then do Lord of the Rings. They're not terrible, but they are flawed in ways that are not worth. We don't have the time to dig into tonight.
No, but I will say, if you want to hear my thoughts about the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies, I did do an episode of Another Pass on them, and more recently we did what we call Another Pass at Another Pass, where we look at the really old episodes and talk about, like, did our thoughts hold up? And my co-host hadn't been on the show at the time, so she gets a chance to give some thoughts about the movie. So if you like The Hobbit and want to hear me talk more about the Hobbit trilogy, check out that episode of Another Pass.
Cool. So my nostalgic memories of The Hobbit also start with this film. As a kid, I loved fantasy, and I got to say, growing up in the 80s, you had a great run of fantasy stuff between things like The Neverending Story and Labyrinth and like all these really fun fantasy things. Even a lot of like Saturday morning cartoons, like things like the Thundercats, are also heavily like fantasy influenced. And so this came along. I thought my dad must have found it somewhere and showed it to me, and I loved it. I thought it was really good. And when I was 8, I read the book, which was quite a lift at age 8. I managed to do it. I was very proud of myself that I got to the end of it, because it's like 300 pages. And then I found I had a copy of The Fellowship of the Ring, which I started, and then I was like, I'm 8 years old, man. This is too much. I barely made it through The Hobbit. I don't have it in me to go through another 1,000 pages of this stuff.
Yeah, it took a few tries for me too with the Lord of the Rings to like get over that hump. Like the early sections, especially the Tom Bombadils, are hard to read when you are a wee one, and it took a while for me.
Yeah, no, same. I didn't read. Well, I'll talk about this more in the Fellowship episode next week. But I didn't read the book until after the Fellowship movie came out, and then I decided, okay, it's time, and then I read it. So for most of my youth, until that movie came along, I think, 2001, this was the Tolkien I had. It was the book of The Hobbit that I'd read the one time, and then this movie I watched several times, and I really enjoy it. Like, it's a cute little tale. You can tell, like, and now that I am actually rereading, as of this recording, I'm rereading Lord of the Rings for the show, just to refamiliarize myself with it, and like the leap that Tolkien made as a writer from his first effort here in The Hobbit to Lord of the Rings is very noticeable. But there's still so much charm in this cute little story of Bilbo Baggins going off to help some dwarves get their home back. And I found myself really enjoying this movie this time around, and I showed it to my kids, and they loved it. They've watched it many times since I first showed it to them. And so I'm, there's something about it that holds up.
Yeah. It's funny. I tried to show this to my daughter, who is 2, so I'm not expecting her to like absorb it in any sort of meaningful way. But her one response was, I don't like this.
It's a little scary. It's a little awkward. And it's interesting that this is coming from Rankin Bass, right? So like Rankin Bass, most people know as like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer people.
Right. Another thing that I am super nostalgic for.
Oh yeah, that could easily show up in our Christmas coverage. I haven't mapped that out yet. So we'll see. And what I found was interesting. So it's a Rankin Bass project, but it was animated by Topcraft, this Tokyo animation studio. And Topcraft went on to basically reconfigure and reform itself as Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, I didn't know that until today when I was doing some research on this. And
Me either.
I was like, oh my God, which is really funny. So we're recording this in May, just for the podcast time factor of this. So like that Studio Ghibli like craze of like ChatGPT edits is pretty recent. So like people have been talking about Studio Ghibli a lot. And to find out that there's that connection of this, what I thought was unrelated thing, is just sort of interesting how the zeitgeist works.
Yeah, because once I found that out and I was rewatching it, I was trying to kind of with an eye go like, does this, can I see the visual design links between this team and what Studio Ghibli would go on to do under Miyazaki? And there are certain things, like some of the monster designs and things they're still very, medieval European fantasy designs, but some of them are a little weird in ways that kind of make me think of like, oh, this was done by a team that maybe isn't quite as steeped in things like Arthurian legend and, all of those things that Tolkien would have been building on.
Yeah, like thinking about that now, I'm like, that explains Gollum to me. Like Gollum looks like a kappa, like minus the egg thing floating in the pool of water on its head. Like it has a very similar kind of design to this Japanese folklore creature, as opposed to the Western centric ones that you would expect.
Yeah, we'll talk about Gollum when we get to his scene, which I really like. But his design, yeah, I mean, canonically, there is no way that this thing used to be a hobbit, as we know from the story. He used to be like he looks more like a frog. He's very weird.
Yeah, this was. Probably this movie is a reason why you mentioned the leap between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings as far as writing goes. It always felt to me like The Lord of the Rings had an element of retconning going on, which is, expanding on the lore and so forth. But like there were Gollum and The Ring both felt to me more. And I don't know how much it was actually mapped out by Tolkien by the time he wrote The Hobbit versus later stuff. But there does feel like a lot of things where they're like trying to work some of these details from The Hobbit into how does this fit into the world of the later stuff that he had sort of like settled on. Gollum's design in this, for me as a kid, made me feel like, oh, that was a retcon, that it used to be a hobbit. The description is fine for the book, but it's like a creature in the darkness. You don't really quite see it, like leaping at that detail for when you jump into like the Lord of the Rings. It's just strange.
Yeah, I think obviously Tolkien realized the potential of this character, and because he is one of the most central characters to the entire thing. And he's very, his part in The Hobbit is still probably my favorite. It's the most entertaining. I love him. I love his, everything about Gollum. I'm all about for both stories. But there actually, I don't know if you were aware of this when you talk about retconning. There was a literal retcon, because when Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings, he actually had to go back and rewrite the chapter in The Hobbit, the Riddles in the Dark chapter. Because in the original version of The Hobbit, released in 1930, whatever it was, Bilbo wins the ring as a prize for beating Gollum in the riddle game. And Tolkien had to go like, well, hold on. There is no way that the Gollum from Lord of the Rings would ever willingly part with the ring under any circumstance. So he rewrote that chapter to be the way it is now, where Bilbo finds it. He, steals away with it, right? Driving Gollum to intense rage.
So even my like 14-year-old self was like picking up on those details.
Right. And so like what's interesting is when you look at this film, it says something like based on the original version of The Hobbit, but that's not true. The way they write and animate that scene is consistent with the rewrite. And I think there's something in The Hobbit. I don't know if it's in a foreword now or some part of it, but Tolkien tries to acknowledge this as something like, you know, in The Hobbit, it's supposed to be Bilbo telling the story, and Bilbo himself is not necessarily a reliable narrator of these events because of his connection to the ring, right? He doesn't want to reveal what really happened down there in the cave. So the version of The Hobbit we have now is like, this is the objective version where Tolkien's telling you what really went down as opposed to Bilbo. Like, it's a neat little, you know, way he tries to reconcile those two versions of the story.
I really like that because it's true. Like, I mean, the element of like the there and back again book component to the Hobbit lore and having it be like Bilbo's like perspective, that makes a lot of sense. Also, he's a fan of the pipe, so like he could have like details that are like a little bit askew.
Yeah, and who knows? I like the idea that he either doesn't remember it correctly because of something like that, or I think the more compelling idea is like, yes, because of the ring.
The ring, yeah.
You know, he's not going to tell you what went down, you know, and you know, again, the most pivotal, most important part of this entire story. And there's also interesting because like there's all this stuff in the Jackson Hobbit movies about Gandalf and you know, having to like go to deal with the necromancer and stuff, which is it's Sauron, you know,
right, but like in another form, which
he's beginning to reemerge.
Spot, yeah, that just kind of feels like, oh well, we had this, we were seeding story stuff, and then we settled on how it's supposed to work later.
But that stuff is in the book, like it's not totally out of left field, and I don't know if that's stuff Tolkien also peppered in there later in, you know, later rewrites, or it's him, you know, again just making strip mining what he had already written to make things work. But yeah, there are little details, and I remember it because I read The Hobbit to my daughter a couple of years ago, and I, you know, now having gone through all this material, I was kind of noticing those little things of like, oh, there are little mentions of stuff to you know, tie these things in. So yeah. Oh, so getting back to the Hobbit, I just wanted to mention a couple of people before we get going. One, some of our main cast members here. We've got Orson Bean as Bilbo, who I think does a great job, and you have John Huston, of all people, as Gandalf, like the great director, you know, legendary director, Angelica Houston's dad, and the villain from Chinatown, you know, a great actor in his own right.
Yeah, doing like. I was watching the Honest trailers for The Hobbit right before we hopped on, and it's like, yeah, like it's Gandalf the jerkass, and it's true. Like, like he has so many snide comments in this movie. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think this is an issue I have with the original book, is that a lot of stuff in this kind of happens just 'cause, and I think Tolkien tries to kind of massage that with this idea of divine intervention, right? And this appears in Lord of the Rings as well, which is this idea of like, yes, forces of evil are at work manipulating things to, you know, help Sauron succeed, but there is also a divine force at work as well. This idea that, you know, Bilbo was meant to find the ring, right? This is all meant to happen because ultimately it'll all work out in the end. And so some of that is here as well. So like Gandalf making snide comments, sometimes more directly just saying things like, you know, well, you know, you'll see this will all work out. You know, there's a reason this happened, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And, you know, in terms of like a version of the character, it's very effective.
Yeah. I mean, I still, you know, my heart still belongs to Ian McKellen, but I grew up with this version of Gandalf, and he is like, this is a Gandalf that like, I think Ian McKellen does this really well too, but you have to always remember when you're dealing with Gandalf, like he looks like an old man. he looks like a wizard, but what he functionally is an angel.
Yes.
And some of that, like, trust me, I know what's going on. Like, I can wreck shop. I am more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Stuff like is right there, under the surface.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider like what he is capable of as Gandalf the Grey, not even getting into like his later form as Gandalf the White, dealing with like the Balrog, for example, like there's very few threats in this movie that are actual threats to Gandalf, which is why he has to sort of like keep disappearing and kind of popping back in.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, right? I think some of it's the functional storytelling thing of like, if they have a wizard in the party, he can just, snap his fingers and deal with all of this stuff. Because, again, the threats that are maybe more, picking on someone his own size, really show up in Lord of the Rings, where he's up against an army or, the Balrog. There's some force way bigger than, 3 trolls.
Right. Because, as is true in D&D, wizards are OP.
Well, I mean, remember, D&D is a reflection of this. Right?
Yes.
This Gary Gygax going, I want to make my own Lord of the Rings.
And The Hobbit is specifically a very D&D kind of story because D&D is I mean, so there's a whole like argument about like, well, what Sword and Sandals kind of epic is the actual inspiration for D&D, and really it's all of them, and it's seeded its way into like every writer has its own preference and so forth. The Hobbit is a very nice low stakes D&D campaign with like a good like big bad in the form of Smaug, and like a cool like longer battle sequence in the Battle of the Five Armies, which can be like a big cinematic kind of thing. The Hobbit is I was thinking about this today. The Hobbit is such a wonderful introduction to just the concept of fantasy. Like, Bilbo is such a good protagonist that it doesn't matter that we don't necessarily know that much about the Shire or hobbits in general in this all. We just kind of get it's like, oh, he's like a middle-aged white dude from England, like basically, like he, in all of his preferences and so forth. And so him kind of stumbling into these like fantasy worlds and these encounters, he is a great character, a great viewpoint character to have it all explained to us. But this also feels like baby's first fantasy story. So it's like, oh, here's the encounter with the trolls. Oh, it's a dragon. It's like, oh, like now there's a spider.
Yeah, and you have to remember the stuff that he's drawing on, right? He's relying on things like Beowulf or the Fairy Queen and Shakespeare stuff and all of the fantasy things that came before him. He of course stands on their shoulders, and you combine that with his real life experience in World War I. Who he fought at the Battle of the Somme, right? He's seen some shit by the time he writes this, and so. Yeah. Yes. Everyone knows the fun fact. This was meant to be Middle Earth is a repository for his made up languages, because that was his real passion. He said it wasn't enough to have these languages. There needs to be a story to go with them. But he perfectly encapsulates, right? We've got Bilbo. He's in the Shire. It's basically, a sheltered world from everything that's going on in the rest of Middle Earth. And he gets this grand tour of a good chunk of Middle Earth to see all of these amazing things. And then he comes back. It is there and back again, right?
Yep.
It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. This is his first outing, and it was meant for a younger audience, and it totally works. There is one more actor I did want to mention. Not a huge character, but Bombur is played by Paul Frees, who was a very prolific voice actor and perhaps best known to like kids everywhere. He's the ghost host from Disney's The Haunted Mansion ride.
Oh, okay.
So is this haunted room actually stretching? That guy. Is Paul Frees. Yeah, a million cartoon voices to this guy's credit, but I just wanted to spotlight him. He's the only other name in here you might recognize. Well, and Glenn Yarbrough, should talk about, does a lot of the singing here. He's like a folk musician who they just found somewhere. I didn't know anything about him before this, but his voice is very like kind of reedy, and it's got this kind of fast vibrato to it, and it's just perfect. He's a bard, like he is the bard for this movie.
Oh yeah, and it's iconic. Okay, so let's talk about the music for a second. Mm-hmm. I generally am pretty good with the music in this movie. I hate the music in Return of the King, the animated Return of the King. It is too much, and I feel like it is a good balance in this movie. mostly because it's a lot of like music playing in the background while montages are happening, to sort of like jump through the story as fast as they can. I think you're right. It's that bard thing. Like it, like it's hard to like think about the music now without like the context of like the South Park Lemminwinks episode, which is a direct parody of this movie.
Yeah, this is Tolkien's works in terms of animation kind of went through this weird thing where we have this, then there was a version of Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers done by Ralph Bakshi, and then this team came back and did Return of the King, which I've never seen. I've never seen any of the other animated stuff other than this one Hobbit movie. But the songs here, other than The Greatest Adventure, which you heard at the beginning of this podcast, I'm sure, all the other songs, at least the lyrics, are taken directly from the book. So they really found good melodies, I think, to work through. I think the song of the Lonely Mountain in the Peter Jackson Hobbits is better, but other than that, these are all really good.
Yeah, they do a really good job of being like kind of an earworm while at the same time like conveying a lot of story details.
And again, using these from the books, right? You could just completely omit them. But I think if you're making a thing for kids, the idea of making it a musical is a reasonable choice. And then saying, well, if we're going to do a musical, guess what? We've got all the lyrics already written. They're in the book. We just have to write tunes for them. And I was listening to this today, just enjoying them. I think overall the songwriting quality here is pretty good.
Yeah, 100%. Like there are spots where it's like weird that it cuts to song, like in the Gollum scene. It is strange that they like abridged the riddle contest by like doing a musical montage of part of it, but at the same time, like it works fine.
I actually like that song a lot. It's creepy.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm really, like I said, it works fine. It just but you know, from a writing standpoint, it is strange to like cut to song right there, without it being a musical number for the characters. Like that's, you know, you would think that it would just be them like doing like a patter song or something like that, but instead it's still this like bardic kind of, or bardcore.
Yeah, and that we should actually mention, that's an important point. The characters never sing. The singing is not diegetic. It's just a song that is playing in the background while other things happen. And I think that works. I feel like if the actual characters burst into song as a true musical, I think that would feel off.
Yeah, I mean, one could probably make it work in an animated movie. Like it doesn't feel weird that there's music in this movie in the first place. But yes, it would be strange, and it would be a very different and specific kind of adaptation of The Hobbit.
Yeah. And one last Hobbit-related memory before we get into the movie proper. There's a restaurant here in Orange County, California, where I live, called The Hobbit, and it is excellent. Like the whole fun of it is like it looks almost like a Hobbit hole. There's this cute little cottage, and like you go inside down into a basement. They have a whole huge wine cellar. It's like a really fancy. It's like, $200 a person, kind of meal, and like it's this very like cozy English Tolkien-inspired experience. So. But I mention it for nostalgic reasons because I think my parents took me there to celebrate me passing the bar exam and so things like major occasions. So just had to mention it. And if you are in the Orange County area and you feel like dropping a few bucks on something fancy, you should do it. All right, let's talk about this movie. So we open with a shot of the book, The Hobbit, and we hear John Huston as Gandalf introduce things. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, the first line of the book.
In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Many ages ago, when this ancient planet was not quite so ancient, long before man recorded his history, it was the time of Middle-earth, when man shared his days with elves, dwarves, wizards, goblins, dragons, and hobbits. In the lands of Middle-earth, in an area known as the Shire, there was a village named Hobbiton. There, in a hole in the ground, lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole, nor a dry, bare, sandy hole. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort.
And we see the map of Middle-earth. We see Hobbiton from above, Baggins. We see Bilbo whistling and cooking, and he goes out for a smoke, and out from behind a tree apparates Gandalf.
So here's a good time for us to like talk about like the design for Bilbo. So he's a roly-poly kind of fool. It's not your normal protagonist, and I like that they lean into that in this. You know, the Peter Jackson movies, just by virtue of the fact that we're dealing with like modern actors and so forth, like
actual humans,
actual humans, yeah. Like you can't have them quite look just like this sort of settled in like middle-aged man kind of design that they've got going for Bilbo in here.
I mean, he's got a little bit of like E.T. DNA. He's got real big eyes. They're kind of far apart. You know, he doesn't quite look like he's just a human, but only 3 feet tall. You know, he does look like he's a separate like species of hominid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which there's this weird plot thread in the Return of the King animated where they're like, oh, hobbits are just generally getting taller, and eventually they're just going to be people, and we're not even going to think about it anymore. That looking at this movie, you're like, this is a different species.
Yeah, no, he definitely is a different species. They do a good job of, I mean, they really differentiate the different species of the main Middle Earth citizens here. So when we meet the dwarves in a minute, we meet the elves later, the goblins, they are drastically different in terms of their look.
Yeah, and depending on the type of elf, like drastically different there.
Very, yeah. I mean, that's true because we meet Elrond and then we meet the Wood Elves who are very different from him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, probably not reconcilable with the canon text, but that doesn't matter for this because, you know, it's just whimsical. And Gandalf, you know, he introduces himself, and Bilbo recognizes, he understands, like, this guy's been around here and there. They know each other to a degree. And he basically says, hey, you want to be a burglar and come on an adventure? And then the dwarves just arrive, all 13 of them. And they start singing we hear the song of the Lonely Mountain.
Bilbo Baggins?
Yes?
I am looking to hire a burglar.
Burglar? I'm afraid you've come to the wrong place.
You mean you do not wish to share a grand adventure?
Dear me, no. We hobbits are plain quiet folk. Adventures make one late for dinner.
Enough. I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me.
Gandalf? Not the wandering wizard.
The same. To dungeons and caverns. We must away at break of day to seek the pale enchanted gold.
Thorin and company at your service. Dwalin, Ballad, Keely, Feely, Dory, Nori, and Ori, Owen, sir, and Glowin, sir. Call him Biffa and him Boffa.
And, Bamboo at your service.
We are all at your service.
And we're introduced to all the 13 of the dwarves, especially their leader, Thorin Oakenshield.
Right, a very different Thorin Oakenshield to the astoundingly handsome Peter Jackson version.
Dude, Richard Armitage is a great actor, too. I've seen him in some other stuff. He's wonderful. By the way, especially the BBC version of Robin Hood, which I highly recommend if you can get your hands on it and watch it. It's really entertaining. He plays Guy of Gisborne in that. But this version of Thorin, yeah, he looks his age, right? Like he's supposed to be like 100 years old or more. You know, these look a little more, I don't want to say like Snow White in the Seven Dwarfs, but their design has a lot more in common than that, with that than they do with the Peter Jackson.
I think that's a fair comparison. Like, especially when you get into the fact that like these dwarves have less personality than Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Like in the animated movie, like there's Thorin and then there's his crew, and that crew is sort of there to be a homogenous unit of dwarves.
Yeah, we don't really get to know any of them other than Thorin and maybe Bomber a little bit because he's the big fat one. But yeah, the rest of them, Keely and Feely and Oin and Gloin, like all of them, even in the books, they're not well differentiated as characters. They're just, that's the company, is these 13 guys.
Right.
And they invade the fuck out of Bilbo's house and just eat whatever they want. They sing. And Bilbo's doing his best to keep up here. And we then get the download here as Bilbo says, he's enjoying their singing about the Lonely Mountain, and and Bilbo's talking wistfully about that and the concept of traveling and having an adventure. Like that's what he wants in deep down. And Thorin then calls the meeting to have Bilbo join the company as an expert treasure hunter / burglar.
We shall soon start on our long journey. Our object is, I take it, well known to us? All of us?
It is not well known to me.
Really? Then we must inform our burglar. We seek a treasure, that which is rightfully ours. Far off in the east, beyond the misty mountains and the dark forest of Mirkwood, there you will find Lonely Mountain. Long ago, this was the home of my people and was ruled by my grandfather, King under the Mountain.
The dwarves of yore made mighty spells, while hammers fell like ringing bells, in places deep where dark things sleep, in hollow halls beneath the fells. Goblets they carved there for themselves, and harps of gold where no man delves. There lay they long, and many a song was sung unheard by man or elves.
Yeah, I like that. That bit of fake it till you make it that's going on there, and part of that is Gandalf pushes Bilbo into that position, but it is certainly fun, just sort of like, because the book has like details where it's like hobbits are really good at being quiet and things like that when they move around, but here it's just sort of like, yeah, he's a burglar, right? And they just roll with it, and he finds a way to be good at it despite the fact that he has no real background in it.
Yeah, there is no explanation. Why him? Right? And why do the dwarves are like, yeah, I guess so. Gandalf says it's okay. Like, the only explanation...
Well, to be fair, if Gandalf says it's okay, probably that is sufficient. But
for them, yeah. But, like, there's there's really no indication at all as to why this is happening to Bilbo. And so the only thing you can kind of go with is, like, this is meant to happen because on some level, Gandalf must know that Bilbo needs to get the ring so Frodo can have the ring so the ring can be destroyed. Like, that's, the only possible explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could make you could make the leap that, all right, so he knows Bilbo, and so he probably sees in Bilbo the adventurous spirit somewhere in there, like, behind the Hobbit pretenses of, like, don't go out, don't do anything adventurous, because that's the Hobbit culture. And Bilbo ultimately bucks that trend once he's forced onto it by Gandalf. Now, it's noted that hobbits are particularly resilient to the magical effects of the One Ring, in a way that most other species are not. So maybe there was like an understanding of like, oh, well, hobbits are not easily corrupted by this terrible magic, and Bilbo is probably the best hobbit, or the only one that I could actually convince to go out there, because, like, like, God forbid it'd be like any of the other hobbits out there who probably wouldn't go out and would. While you can force Bilbo into it, you get the feeling that, like, the Saxville Baggins or whatever, would just, like, completely screw up the mission if they had to.
Well, and as we know, even the hobbits can't be entirely counted on for something like that, because Smeagol gets his hands on the ring and instantly kills his cousin to get his hand on it, right? He's corrupted immediately. So the question really comes down to, how much does Gandalf actually know he claims, after Frodo gets the ring, at least in the book, like it takes like 20 years of Gandalf like researching and doing stuff like, how do we confirm this actually is the One Ring? So
right.
In theory, he wouldn't be doing that. He wouldn't be taking his sweet ass time unless there was a reason for him to do that. So we can only intuit that he has some sense of the need to find the ring, where it might be. It's not clear, and that's fine. It doesn't need to be.
It also might just be like an iron in the fire, but he has many of them. Like he might be constantly looking for people who could theoretically be counted upon in a more severe circumstance. And it's just like, well, he got lucky this time and he found the ring. And in the movie, he is very aware that the ring has been picked up. Like he makes puns about it. So yeah, I don't know. The Gandalf of this movie does seem to have some like meta knowledge. The Gandalf of the books, it's harder to say.
Right. I think you're right. I mean, there's definitely a sense that Gandalf believes correctly that Sauron is still potentially a danger and could return, and things need to be done in a way that like Saruman and Galadriel, like these other characters are kind of like, I don't know, he's been gone for 3,000 years. I think we're good. Bill or Gandalf is the one who senses that, which again hastens the need for this quest. So Bilbo, of course, wants to know, what am I doing here? What's this quest about? I don't know. You all seem to know. And so now we get the exposition from Thorin via the song, which is partly spoken through by Gandalf. And we get the flashback of the dwarves of, it's unnamed here, but Erebor, the Lonely Mountain, their civilization and how they were greedy. They amassed all this gold, and that attracted the worm, WYRM, Smaug, who came to live there, destroyed the nearby the human town of Dale that's at the foot of the mountain, and drove all of the dwarves into a dwarven diaspora.
Right. And it's an effective storytelling. And again, Bilbo is just a fantastic protagonist in that he doesn't know shit. And so you have to fill him in about every detail.
Right.
Which is what you want in a movie like this.
No, it gives you an excuse for, the exposition you need, because you have a character who doesn't know what's going on, just like we do. So, so after that, they explain Bilbo is going to make this unlucky number 13 company of dwarves into 14. So thank God he's there for triskaidekaphobia reasons. And they have a contract ready, which I do like that the best detail in the contract is like funeral expenses are paid for if necessary.
Right. On this rewatch, the scene is so damn similar to in the 13th Warrior when they're like, we need a 13th Warrior. It just kept on. I realize, obviously, which is funny though, because that's also an adaptation of Beowulf, and this is sort of an adaptation of Beowulf in a certain regard, or at least as like thematic elements of Beowulf, with the dragon component. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. So Gandalf even accepts the deal for him here. I can't remember in the book. I think Bilbo ultimately is the one who makes the choice, but here Gandalf's like, yep, he'll sign. He's good. And he says, tomorrow begins your greatest adventure. And we get the song, The Greatest Adventure, as Bilbo kind of, goes outside to look at the moon and think. And from this, we're off on our adventure. We see the company trekking across the land, and Bilbo is grousing about, the lack of creature comforts.
Right, which, hobbits are want to have.
Very much so, right? Second breakfast and all that. And I like they let you know again about Gandalf's power, right? He somehow teleports to the head of the company when he was previously behind. And, I think it's Bomber tells Bilbo to like, oh, just think of pleasant things. And he'll do this throughout the movie several times where he's just kind of like listing off like, oh, cakes, my garden at twilight, bacon, hot chestnuts, whatever he's talking about, just listing off thinking of his happy place.
Does that scene happen before or after they get to Elrond? That must happen before, yeah. So then when they are like arriving at Rivendell, and it's just like elven singing in June.
Yeah, for now though, we're gonna have our first adventure because it's raining. They're looking for a dry patch to sleep, and they come upon 3 trolls. And Thorin instructs Bilbo to go burgle some food or supplies from the trolls, since he's in theory their expert burglar, and he is caught immediately.
Yep.
What the blazes?
Help! Help! Let me down! Stop that! Stop that!
What have we got here? Let's cook him and find out. He wouldn't make a mouthful. But maybe there's more where he came from.
Dwarves! I'm done for! Run for it!
Now that's a supper. Let's go get 'em all. Let's roast them. Nah, boil them, says I. Each to his own, boys. There's plenty for all. I likes mine raw.
Dawn take you all, and be stoned to you.
And then he fucks up by, he yells, "Hey, all you dwarves out there, run for it!"
Yeah.
Letting them know, oh, there's more to eat. So they drop Bilbo and go and round up the 13 dwarves.
Yep. So where do we start here? The dwarf or the troll designs? Or
sure, we can start.
Those are sure interesting. The giant schnozzes that like are fused with their lips, like to the point where it's almost like beakish, is really interesting.
It's funny. The Dark Crystal came later, but they kind of have a similar design.
They have a Skeksis, yeah.
Well, yeah, and also a little bit the I think they're called the Urus, the mystics from Dark Crystal.
Oh, yes.
The noses. They've got these big like tusks that I don't think that's necessarily from the description in Tolkien, and they're very they're just big brutes is what they are.
Right. And it's amazing that they are so able to immediately catch all the dwarves.
13 of anything. That's herding cats. Like, I'm surprised they did so well. But
especially with that size difference. Like, if you told me, like, yes, like 13 cats, catch them all.
Mm-hmm. And they're still
even
armed.
If they were, like, crippled or something like that, like, I would have a hard time, like, catching them all.
Yeah. But they're all tied up in sacks. And they skip something important here. This is in the book. I didn't realize this until I rewatched it. Like, oh yeah, they skipped this. The key in the book is that Bilbo kind of proves his worth. He keeps the dwarves talking, because what we're told is at sunrise these dwarves the trolls will turn to stone. Yeah. And so here Gandalf just appears and like says, "Dawn take you all." Boom! I'm magically causing the sun to rise, and they all turn to stone. I believe, though, in the book, Bilbo has some agency here. He's somehow able to, stall for time until that can happen.
Yeah, it just makes Gandalf more of the Deus Ex Machina that he is throughout this movie.
Yeah, I thought this was as a dramatic choice. Maybe this is to help contrast when he is way more proactive later, as he'll later point out he's pulled their asses out of the fire many times, since this point, like he becomes a little more capable.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it was difficult to, like from the standpoint of how do you explain without, I guess you could just have like a throwaway line of like Bilbo talking to himself saying like, if I keep them talking, they won't notice that the sun's rising or something like that. But like that is exposition that is difficult to convey in that scene there. If it's easy for Gandalf to be like, the sun's up, now you're turning to stone. But for the plot or like the plan to keep them talking and so forth, and for Bilbo to know that, for a character who is explicitly in this the I don't know shit character, like, it works fine, but it is yet, like I said, just another, Gandalf Ex Machina moment.
Yeah. And so with everyone freed and safe, they go investigate the cave and find that there is all kinds of useful stuff down there, including the several blades, including Orcrist, the Goblin Cleaver. We'll later find out that goes to Thorin. The sword that we'll find out later is Glamdring, the foe hammer. That is Gandalf's blade. And a little dagger that Bilbo takes for his own, and he'll later name Sting. Now, one interesting thing about this scene in the book is there are other blades there that are taken by the company. One of them will eventually find its way into the hands of Meriadoc Brandybuck and will be instrumental in taking down the Witch King of Angmar in Return of the King.
Oh, nice. I did not remember that whole sequence there.
No, I only know this because of research. I'm not the world's biggest Tolkien nerd. I can only do so much. But yeah, apparently that's part of it, is that these are elvish like special blades, and that if you remember, of course, the famous moment we'll talk about in the Return of the King podcast, I am no man, and Éowyn stabs him. That only works because Merry stabs him with this blade that like kind of softens him up in a way that allows Éowyn to do the killing stroke. But it's because of this magical elven blade that's discovered here in this cache. So. Yeah,
this encounter with the trolls is super famous. Like, it's referenced a lot in later Tolkien stuff, or specifically in the Jackson Lord of the Rings. Like, we get a sequence where it's like, oh, it's the statues. They used to be the trolls. It is so amazing what they find here. Like, this is the most like generous DM right there. Being like, yeah, not only did you find a horde with like a magical weapon, it's like a legendary magical weapon. Like, it's Orcrist, it's Glamdring.
They're all here.
Yeah.
For some reason. Yeah. So the other thing is that this is when Gandalf, he decides, okay, I've had this map the whole time, which probably Thorin, you should have had. But anyway, I've got it. And this is the map.
I have chosen now to give it to you.
Yeah. And Bilbo looks at it and deduces, hey, there's a secret entrance to the Lonely Mountain. That's how we'll get in past Smog. There's a finger pointing towards the mountain, which is an interesting leap. But Gandalf says, you are right. And here Thorin is the key to the secret door. Now we just have to know how to find the door, and the map doesn't say. Gandalf is a little he seems to know, but he's keeping it to himself.
Yeah, so rewatching this, and this is just like the funny nature of time. So like, I know I keep alluding to D&D. I'm a giant D&D nerd. I'm sorry.
No, please. This is why you're here.
If you're here for a Hobbit podcast, I assume you're probably talking some D&D at points. So as of the recording, which again is happening in May, and I know it's going to be several months, they just did a play test for a cartographer artificer, and I laughed so hard at when it's like, "Ooh, I love maps." I'm like, "Oh, well, I know how to spec you now." like it's an artificer. Artificers, for those who are not D&D nerds, are magic characters who specifically make magic items as their deal, and so this is one that makes magic maps. And like that's the character's whole deal. And so it was like, oh well, yeah, that works for Bilbo as being like obsessed with maps. And they're very good at being like thief type characters. So yeah, that would all work.
Cool.
And like I said, it's just I laughed because of the coincidence in the zeitgeist.
Well, it's time to go to Rivendell, down in the valley. Ha ha.
Rivendell, the hidden valley of the elves, where Elrond dwells.
Simply enchanting.
But we must be on.
Pity. Elvish singing is not a thing to miss in June under the stars. But
Tra-la-la-lally, here down in the valley, oh, where are you going with beards on a wagon? No knowing, no knowing what brings Mr. Baggins and Balin and Dwellin in June.
My dear Elrond, your hospitality is magnificent. The food, the wine, the stories, the music.
Yes, but we've much to accomplish. You promised to have a look-see at these troll swords after our feast.
Yes, yes, of course. Well, first of all, they're not troll make. They must have been stolen. They were made for the Goblin Wars. This sword, Thorin, the rune's name, Orcrist, the Goblin Cleaver. And mine, Glamdring, the Foe Hammer.
And we get this, kind of very pastoral, pleasant song, which plays as the dwarves descend from where they are down into the valley where Rivendell is. And we have dinner with Elrond. And this design for Elrond, he's got this, solar system diorama floating around his head of twinkling stars. It's really
that are very static. It's the animation on it. They don't put really much into it, but they're not putting nothing into it, and it's a very interesting design detail because it's just they are floating there, but they're not doing any kind of effect to make them look like they're glowing or anything like that. It's just stars
that are not connected to anything. They just stay in a fixed position around his head. Yeah,
right.
Not in the book. Nothing. I don't.
They don't orbit his head. They are just they are just fixed positions outside of his head.
It's like wearing. It's like having a crown with jewels, and then you take the crown away, and just the jewels are floating there.
Right.
Yeah, it's an odd look. But he's there. He's holding court, and he explains what these swords are that they found. And Bilbo shows him the map, and Elrond says, there are moon letters here, which means that when you hold the map up to the moon, there are secret runes on it that suddenly become visible. And that there's a little prophecy there that explains that when stand by the Greystone, when the thrush knocks, at the last light of the setting sun will shine upon the keyhole.
There are moon letters here. See?
What are moon letters?
Runes that can only be seen when the moon shines behind them. They give directions for finding the secret door. Stand by the grey stone when the thrush knocks, and the last light of the setting sun will shine upon the keyhole.
Yep. And then musical montage to them traveling.
Yep. Got it. We got our instructions. Now we know what's on the map.
Yeah. This movie wastes no time. All of the scenes are so tight. For better or for worse. It is jarring sometimes where it's just we're in the lap of luxury at sitting around with Elrond and his court, and then smash cut to them struggling as they are back on their travel montage.
Right. Again, there are two versions of this story. One is 77 minutes long, and the other is anywhere between 3 and 5 hours. Or, I'm sorry, 9 and 10 hours long.
Right.
Yeah, that's how long it takes to tell the story. You either get one or the other. So they are struggling through the windy paths up the Misty Mountains in a storm, and they seek shelter in a cave. And Bilbo has a little dream of being back in Hobbiton to the sound of crack the plates and all that. And when he wakes up, the cave wall slides open, and they are beset upon by goblins.
Hello, what's this? Look out! The ponies! The ponies! Wake up! They're being run!
The goblins are upon us! Save the ponies from the goblins! You go, my lad! Oh, my lad! You
Yes. The freaky looking goblins. We were texting about this one because they have this very strange design choice, which is they have like 2 throats.
So I couldn't figure this out. So I was trying to think, is it just that like the way they're drawn? So, when you picture a cartoon mouth, there's always a uvula in the back.
Right.
And so at first I thought, well, maybe what they're doing is just from the angle of it, the uvula comes down, but the bottom of it is cut off by like the tongue or the lips or whatever. So you just don't see the full thing. But it's also and the way I interpreted it as a kid, which is the way you just did, which is they have 2 throats, which is great. It's so wild and strange.
Yeah, I mean, like, we could make some crude jokes about like the use of those 2 throats, but certainly it speaks to the like reptilian nature that they sort of depict the goblins in this as having. Since like humans, like our windpipe is like one tube, but for like reptiles, like their nostrils are a separate tube from like their throat. So it could be a scenario. I doubt it was that thought. I think they were just going for like what looks really weird.
Yeah, because they don't look reptilian here. They look like,
they've got scales. Like,
a little
I mean,
bit.
yeah, sure, they've got hair and stuff too, but like they're weird.
They're odd looking, and we don't get a whole lot about the goblins in like, at least in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings, or even in the Peter Jackson Hobbit, like their culture, their, where they fit in. We get a lot of detail about the orcs and like where they fit into things. But these are just like, I don't know, they're just these weird cave-dwelling mountain ghouls. Like they're not well explained, at least not in the primary material.
Yeah, well, and this is another area where it gets weird because it's like the whole like Tolkien thing, of like, oh well, goblins and orcs are the same thing but different languages, but there are differences between them, and there's like, and depending on it all, like retelling the story, it's orcs when they talk about it in the Lord of the Rings when talking about the Hobbit, but there's specific moments that are confusing about like goblin men versus yada yada yada. It's kind of confusing, and like it was a good idea in the Jackson movies to like focus on the Uruk-hai, because it was like, okay, here's a distinct separate new thing to focus on and not have to explain all of the weirdness of the goblin culture.
Right. And so far they have not appeared in the Rings of Power either. There's no reference to them, so you're not getting any extra material there if you happen to watch that. So we get this sequence, right? This song, Down, Down to Goblin Town. And I think this is kind of artistically well put together. These like kind of like quick flashes of like chains, being swung, and the ponies, and then, that whole sequence I think is really cool. And we wind up in front of the Goblin King, who interrogates them. And Thorin says, hey, we just needed shelter for the night. And they're like, bullshit, you've got Orcris the Goblin Cleaver with you. That I know that sword.
Who are these miserable persons? Thorin, at your service. We did not mean to trespass. We were merely seeking shelter from the storm.
He is a liar, O truly tremendous one. Ask him to explain his weapon. This sword is named Orcris, the Goblin Cleaver.
Murderers! Elf friends! Stop! I know that sword! It is called Glamgring! The Full Hammer! No!
Gandalf! Good old Gandalf!
Follow me, quickly!
Yeah, I like that detail, by the way. Like, they just get this thing, and now they're in the worst possible situation, politically speaking, because of this item. I think that's a nice like setup payoff part there.
Yeah, agreed. Like it's like, oh, this sword is not going to do you any good here. But fortunately, before they can be murdered by the goblins, Gandalf appears in a flash of blinding blue light, stabs the goblin. Well, he doesn't stab the Goblin King. This is done, for kids. So we see the sword being swung by an invisible hand in the dark, and the Goblin King spirals away into a blur.
Yeah, it's a very sanitized murder.
This is how they often do death in this thing. Is some sort of very abstracted version of being felled with a sword. And Gandalf, tells him, "Hey, run!" And they book it. But Bilbo, for some reason, is piggyback on one of the dwarves and hits his head on the roof of the cave and goes tumbling down into a black chasm of just seemingly infinite darkness.
Yeah, and is that a commercial break right there?
It sure feels like it. The way the soundtrack kind of heightens and then comes to a stop. But I don't know if this was actually meant to be aired on TV or if it was.
Right. I guess it initially aired on TV, so it must make sense that it would have commercial breaks put in there. But this is the only spot that really stood out to me as being oh, that's aggressive.
I think there's at least one more that I noticed. I don't know if I put it in my notes, but there's others.
Yeah, I'm not saying there aren't. I'm just this is the one that really got me.
Yeah. And now we come to the Riddles in the Dark sequence. I think this is the highlight of it for me. I always love this part of the story. So we hear Gollum first talking to himself, talking to his precious, and grabbing a live fish out of this lake at the bottom of the world where he lives in a little hut on the lake. Bilbo finds himself on the shore, and he uses the light from his sword. His sword glows, and he spots a ring, and he puts it in his pocket.
My precious. It is my precious. Hello, my precious. Blesses and splashes. Food for my precious.
Eggs and bacon, scones all polished, warm muffins and sweet butter.
What is that noise, my precious? My precious does not know.
Bless my soul. Hello, what's this? Nice souvenir to show the neighbors back home, if I ever get home. Oh, who are you?
Bless us, my precious. A tasty morsel it would make us. What is it, my precious?
I am Mr. Bilbo Baggins. I've lost my dwarves, my wizard, and my way.
Yeah, he's it'll be a nice little memento for the future.
Yep. One of the things I like about this is they don't. This is kind of a momentous point in the story. Bilbo becomes the ring bearer, right? He takes it.
Yeah.
This is echoed, and I'll talk about this next week. But the shot when Frodo becomes the ring bearer, equally they don't spotlight it. He's literally Elijah Wood is blurry. He's in the background behind Gandalf, who's in the foreground. He just kind of goes, he just picks it up off the floor. There's something poetic about that idea of no, it's not like the score comes up to meet him and we zoom in on the ring as his hand clutched. It's just it seems like nothing. I'm just picking it up.
Yeah, it's innocuous. It's a moment that is there that we recognize things are happening, but it's the gravitas is stripped away from it.
Right. And so Gollum comes out to greet Bilbo. And again, the design on this, not only is he, he's got this like a cross between a frog and a catfish kind of face and body. He's got these, yes, Gollum's supposed to have gigantic eyes, but these are really big, even compared to the Peter Jackson version. They're huge, reflective eyes. And he's significantly larger than Bilbo.
Yeah, that's another detail that really threw me when I actually read Lord of the Rings, and I was how does that work?
Yeah, I think it's just they're just doing their own thing. You know, they're not. Yes, this movie does acknowledge the continuity in places to Lord of the Rings, but this is their own version of Gollum. He's different. I do really, you know, as much as I love Andy Serkis's performance, this is a great Gollum. I found this very like disquieting as a kid.
Yeah, it's a good monster in the darkness.
He's weird. We've never seen anything like him, right?
Yeah.
His weird grammar is there, but just I don't have the actor's name in front of me, but the way there's like a musicality to his voice. Everything about this is threatening, you know, and as it should be. And it's, you know, you're filled with questions. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? Why is he like this? You know, why is he so obsessed with the ring? Like all of the questions you want to ask, like this vocal performance that, you know, it came on its birthday. Like it's very different from this version of Gollum that we're used to. You know, it's they both work, but I for some reason I kind of drawn to this. Maybe it's because it's the first one I heard.
Well, also you're not like overexposed to it because like who doesn't love doing like a
yeah
kind of voice.
And, I mean, look, Gollum's the Andy Serkis one. I like it, but it is not that different from Lilo and Stitch. Like it's kind of the same. Or Hannah means family. Like it's not that different.
Right.
You know, it's raspier, but that's, by the way, not to take away from Andy Serkis because the performance itself is great. But
right, yeah. Again, it's just like I mean, I think it was a little overexposed by virtue of the fact that everyone loved doing imitations of it, and it's just distinctly different. And that is it is interesting here to see such an effective but dramatically different version of the Gollum, like characterization going off of the same base text. You know, like. The way that like the Gollum sound is a sound that he makes when he moves around and so forth. Like that's the same for both versions of the character, but it is distinct here and good.
Yeah. So like the Peter Jackson, Andy Serkis Gollum noise, his is more like he said this, it was like coughing up a hairball. It's like that. Mm-hmm. And here it's more of this, like, again, frog, like just like,
yeah, it's a little ribbity.
Yeah. So he comes out and he's debating whether or not do we eats it, you know, and Bilbo is very friendly to this thing. He says, "Hey, I'm lost. Do you know the way out?" And they decide,
stay back or I'll stab you. But like, how about some directions?
Yeah. And so they decide to play a battle of riddles. And if Bilbo wins the battle of riddles, then Gollum will show him the way out. And if Gollum wins the battle of riddles, he will eat Bilbo. And we go into their back and forth of riddles. And this is where we get to that song. And that song is just one of the riddles.
A box without hinges, key or lid, yet golden treasure inside is hid.
Let us give it a chance, my precious. Ah, eggs! Eggs it is!
Oh, bother!
It cannot be seen, cannot be felt, cannot be heard, cannot be smelled. It lies behind stars and under hills, and empty holes it fills. It comes first and follows after, ends life, kills laughter. The answer is dark, the dark.
Us now! Now us, my precious.
I'm a quiver with anticipation.
This thing, all things, devours, bursts, beasts, trees, flowers, knows iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to meal, slays king, ruins town, and beats high mountain down.
And I love the way this is shot. Like, not only is this song very creepy, but we kind of pan away from where Bilbo and Gollum are to just these like shots of the interior of this vast cave system. And there's something about this that like conveys how like ancient this place is, and like the kinds of like foreboding and evil that might exist in Tolkien's world that this is our only glimpse of it here.
Yeah, it's a very effective scene.
There's also like, I noticed like there's faces in those cliff walls and stuff. Like you can see like there's parts of it where you're like, oh, that looks like a person's face. There's several of them, and like, yeah, just a really disquieting, like I said, section of this movie. And so after we go through this, Bilbo, you know, he manages to best Gollum. He barely comes up with the answer to Gollum's riddle and says, all right, I need another. Why can I go now? I won. And Gollum says, nope, you know, he has to ask another riddle. And Bilbo says, what have I got in my pocket?
Yeah, so in the book, it's supposed to be he's just kind of like muttering to himself and like thinking aloud. And here it's just like, I don't know. They do as good a job as they can at making that feel natural.
I thought he was deliberate. I was literally saying, here's a riddle you can't fucking solve. What have I got in my pocket?
Right. But that's not a riddle, is like the thing.
No, that's why Gollum thinks he cheated, and he did. You know?
Yeah.
I've done this to my daughter. Like my daughter will send when it's bedtime, instead of saying she wants a story, she says, I want to do riddles. So we'll look up, you know, like a web page or something, riddles, you know, on the internet, and she'll ask me these riddles. And every once in a while, one of the riddles would be like, that's a riddle from The Hobbit. I've heard this before, you know, literally one of them. And so I will respond occasionally with like, okay, I'll ask you one. What have I got in my pocket? And she'll get mad.
Yeah.
So obviously Gollum can't answer. He loses. And he says, but first, my precious shows it something pretty. My birthday present. And he takes off on his little boat to go to his island there and go looking for the ring. And I just love this, like, again, these nods about his birthday present, especially to me as a kid who did not know the story of Smeagol from Lord of the Rings, like these like tantalizing hints about like what happened to this guy and like what's so special about this ring and why does he have it? Like, I love how they drop all that stuff in here, especially if, like you said, it's a mystery when you don't know what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, this is a really good scene. Like, I think, you know, we're both fairly in love with it in terms of being like a solid adaptation of a very classic moment and ultimately the most important moment in this entire story, or like in The Hobbit, in how it relates to the broader Lord of the Rings franchise.
Totally. So Gollum freaks out. He can't find the ring. And he susses out that Bilbo lied. But in the meantime, Bilbo puts on the ring and discovers that it makes him invisible. And using that, Gollum comes up. He realizes, it knows the way out. It says it doesn't know the way out, but it knows the way in. And so Gollum goes racing for the cave exit, and Bilbo simply follows him and then passes him at the very end and gets out of the cave. And this awesome shot of Gollum like vowing revenge, incredible. Like I like this better than the Jackson version of it. Like, it's so, like, the way they animate his eyes like flashing, like, it's, you know, it's fairly crude animation, but it is like the intensity is unmatched by anything else in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's move this along. So Bilbo goes down to Gandalf and he tells him sort of the story, and Gandalf again is just like, oh, your story has the ring of truth, you know.
Yep. Yeah. He drops so many lines like that. It's like, this Gandalf knows.
He knows everything. He knows what's up. But the sun is setting behind the mountains, and yes, they've been lucky to rejoin the company of dwarves, but with the sunset, that gives the goblins a chance to attack, which they do, driving them up into the trees to yet another awesome song straight out of the book.
The war will the goblins. 15 birds in 5 fir trees. Their feathers were fanned in a fiery breeze. But funny little birds, they had no wings. Oh, what shall we do with the funny little things? Oh, what shall we do with the funny little things? Roast them alive or stew them in a pot. Fry them, boil them, eat them hot. Bake and toast them, fry and roast them till beards blaze and eyes glaze, till hair swells and skins crack. Fat melts and bones black in cinders lie beneath the sky. So the dwarf shall die. 15 birds in 5 fir trees, their feathers were fanged.
Yep, and then of course we have the thing that happens that everyone knows about in the Lord of the Rings, and especially in the Hobbit, that the eagles save the day.
Right, they just show up out of nowhere, and give them all a lift to where they need to go. I do like that they do this in both this and the Jackson one, but Gandalf has like a pine cone that he kind of like magics up into a grenade of like glowing blue stuff. That's rad. Like. I just love that touch.
Yeah, it makes you think that like, man, like they like, because as a kid I used to like pretend that like a pine cone was a grenade and like pull the pin and toss it kind of thing, and like it's nice to know that like, oh man, we all had that thought.
Yeah, it's a great scene. Like as they're chased up into the blazing, flaming trees as the goblins set them on fire. I do like the eagles do that, like. They talk here. I don't know if they ever talk again in the rest of the books, but like he's like, I remember Gandalf, you saved me, and now I've saved you. And off they go. They skip over this interesting chapter where they meet this guy named Bjorn who can turn into a bear. That's in the book. They just bypass that. And they're off into Mirkwood at this dangerous forest, at which point Gandalf just pieces out.
Yep. Like you do.
Like, and I love that the reaction is like, no, like, what are you doing? Why? They need him. But he says, oh, don't worry. You've got Bilbo. Just as good as an immortal wizard. 3-foot-tall farm boy here is going to help you.
He's starting to level up a little bit. His sneak attack is getting better.
And he's got the ring. Of course, they don't know that.
Yes.
And a magic sword. But so yeah, I love this sequence because I remember the sequence in the book. It's very long as they go marching through Mirkwood and get lost and are starving, in this long trek through these impossibly black woods. But there's this beautiful moment, and there's a song here again from Glenn Yarborough, and Bilbo climbs. They tell him he's going to climb up into a tree and see what's what. And he comes to the top of this tree and sees all these butterflies and just there's this moment of great beauty within all of this hideous darkness.
Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea.
The days are terrible, and the nights are impossible, for we are hungry and thirsty. The berries which grow here are hideous. Everything about these woods is unpleasant. One day we decided someone should climb to the top of the tallest tree and have a look about. I couldn't argue. My contract is vague on several points.
Over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone, under the mountains in the moon.
There are moments which can change a person for all time. And I suddenly wondered if I would ever see my snug hobbit hole again. I wondered if I actually wanted to.
Let go.
Right, and it's just, I don't want to say like wonderfully animated because there are, it's still the TV budget that they're working with, but it is very, very lush looking.
Yeah, they definitely do the best that they can with their budgetary constraints on this animation. The other thing that Bilbo's doing here is he's keeping a log. Gandalf told him to. Hey, keep a log. That this log will ultimately become his book. Right. He's narrating a lot of this because now Gandalf is gone. And then the next morning he wakes up and everyone's gone but him. They've all been wrapped up by spiders. And not just any spiders, like, gigantic, I don't know, what are they, 7 feet tall spiders or something?
Mm-hmm.
These designs are goofy.
They're tiny, so it's hard to say exactly how big the spiders are, but they're big spiders relative to the small people.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to meet one. They come up to your chest or something. They're still huge.
Yeah.
They're not Shelob big, but they're big. And so Bilbo decides he's going to put on the ring, make himself invisible, free all of his friends with his sword, and kill himself some spiders with his newly dubbed sword, Sting.
Yes. Such an iconic weapon. Like, man, I got me a wee Frodo behind in the background, wielding his sting, and like, man, like, such, like, compared to Orcrist and Glamdring, like, this is such a cool thing with a name that like speaks to the novelty of it all. Like, it's this cool weapon that he finds that doesn't have like all this gravitas and weight behind it. It's just like, yep, no, this is a dope ass little blade.
Yeah, and it's all his, right? It doesn't. If it has a history, we don't really know what it is, other than it's an elvish blade, and it glows blue when dark forces are around. The only thing that takes me out of it is it's very hard for me to separate this from the musician of the same name. So I had to put that out of my head every time I hear, my sword, Sting, Roxanne, I gotta put that away. But it's cool. Like, and I think it's interesting, like the design of this Sting. I know Peter Jackson was influenced by this stuff, this and the Ralph Bakshi, the Lord of the Rings adaptations that came before him. And like the Sting that's in the Peter Jackson films looks a whole lot like this. Like if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep.
And once again, we get those like deaths that are sort of, even when he's killing giant bugs, it's like they go spiraling away, right? It's literally like how you kill things in a Final Fantasy game. They just like disappear.
Right. Yeah. It just like fades away.
Look, on the path ahead. There it is. It has freed us supper. Now we see you. We will eat you and leave your skin hanging in the tree. Grab it!
I think I can hold them off. Run to the Wood Elves' clearing.
But how can you?
I will do the stinging. Run! Swiftly now.
We've trapped it now. Close the circle. It can't escape us.
Lazy Lord! Apricot!
What is it? What is it for?
Sting! Sting! Sting!
Oh, retreat! We are no match for Sting.
But the spiders are pursuing, and Bilbo tells all the newly freed dwarves he'll hold them off single-handedly, which he's able to do. And so they all run away, and when Bilbo catches up to them, they're being captured again, this time by the Mirkwood elves that live in the forest too.
Yeah, just a sequence of events that happens to them. It's just like, and then.
I think there's literally a chapter in this book. In fact, it's the sequence with when they're getting chased up into the trees again by the goblins we just talked about. I think it's called Out of the Frying Pan. Is the name of the chapter. Like, it's literally that over and over again, out of the frying pan into the fire. And so Bilbo has the ring on for days, weeks, as he does recon around this settlement of elves to figure out what he's going to do to free his friends, which, begs interesting questions knowing what we know about the ring. for to have it on for that long. But this version of the story, the ring exerts no corrupting influence on Bilbo that we can see.
Right. It's interesting to wonder what like a truly like, you said that the revised Tolkien versions are like the objective version, but like to see a truly objective one would be interesting. And I guess we're kind of seeing that in the Jackson movies, but for whatever that's worth.
I know I don't know the Jackson Hobbit movies nearly as well as I do the Lord of the Rings ones, but I believe they have to keep with what they've established. So they do have to kind of deal with the idea that like it is beginning to corrupt him. And also, when he puts it on here, when Bilbo puts on the ring, he just turns invisible. The way the visual language they establish in the Jackson Lord of the Rings movies has to hold true here, which is that the entire world, that Frodo or Bilbo disappears from view, but he actually enters into like a wraith world that's a nightmare.
Right.
So they have to kind of do that without like Sauron's big eyeball popping up and seeing him.
Yeah. It is, to do a different kind of nerd illusion, it is similar to the way that Phantom Girl works from the Legion of Superheroes, where it's stepping into a different dimension.
I have to accept that is true. I am, unfortunately, I'm not nerdy enough on this particular topic. Not going to say I'm not nerdy enough, just not on this, to know what you're talking about. So I love the scene. There's a scene with the Elf King. Like he has like a weird accent too.
Yeah, it's kind of like a German sounding accent that goes with this like weird wood elf design. I don't know.
Yeah, and so the Elf King wants to know why they quote unquote attacked them, and he says, "We didn't attack you. We came begging for food." And the elf's like, "I want to know why you're really here." And since Thorin won't tell him, they lock him up.
Why did you dwarfs try to attack?
No attack. We came to beg. We were starving.
And why were you in the forest in the first place?
That is our business.
Very well. Take them away until they feel inclined to tell the truth, even if they wait 100 years.
Greed. The fortune we were after was big enough to share with the elves. They'd make valuable allies against that old worm Smog.
That's all.
Instead, they became the enemy, and we were their prisoners. And even though my invisibility allowed me to move about with ease, I had no way of opening the locks. So it was weeks before I found a way to free my companions.
And Bilbo even says he thinks that Thorin should have agreed to share the treasure with them in exchange for their help with Smog, which is not the last time Bilbo will say something pretty astute here about Thorin sharing the treasure in exchange for alliances and maybe a better outcome.
Yeah. And that is a detail in like the Jackson movies where they sort of like make the treasure kind of like as possessive as the ring to a degree. That in this is just sort of like, oh, Thorin's a D-bag.
Yeah, a little bit. And they also introduced the idea of like the Arkenstone as again like also a corrupting influence like the ring, although not as pronounced, right?
Right.
But I don't think they need, again, they don't need to. Like greed is also a plenty powerful motivator even without magic. And also I think he feels entitled, right? This is his birthright. He is king under the mountain.
Yeah, he does make, like, for example, the map, when he finds out about it, he's like upset that he wasn't given it sooner. He does feel very entitled throughout about all of this.
Right. So Bilbo hits on a strategy, which is there is this exchange going on between the men of Lake Town down the river and the elves. They send wine in barrels, and then they send the barrels back for to be refilled. So the plan is we'll bust you out of jail, we'll all hide in the barrels and ride them down the current to Lake Town, which is exactly what they do.
Complaining. I never promised to burgle you first-class accommodation.
Stoops and shadow, gray and gray. He holds past pump, rolling down the hole.
we get another song, Heave Ho, as they're like going down the river. And it's very cute as opposed to a very contrived action sequence in the Jackson version. Right. And we get our first view of the Lonely Mountain. And I like the way Bilbo kind of talks about that, of just like, it's one thing to see a drawing of it on a map. It's another to see this giant foreboding spire in person.
Yep. This thing that they've been walking towards this whole time, it's finally in front of them.
Yeah. And also, but I think the intimidating nature of it, right? That Bilbo's like, oh shit, because I know what's in that mountain. It's real now. So they go down to Lake Town and they meet the folks in Lake Town who are descendants of the residents of Dale, the village that Smaug burned. They live in this entirely town that's built on the lake. And the dwarves are freed from barrels. And there's this song about the Mountain King's return. And Bard, kind of the main man here at Lake Town, says, we will help you. So they rest, they resupply, and they start heading up the mountain.
Yep.
And that's kind of all we get of Lake Town, before the shit hits the fan.
Yeah, we don't need much more than that. It's just, we established Bard as a character and that they are there.
Yep, that's it. That's all we need. So they go up the mountain. They start looking for the secret door. Thrush shows up, does exactly what the map says is going to happen, and they open the door. And then there's the debate about, now what do we do? And of course, Bilbo, you're the burglar, so you go into the dragon cave.
This is literally what we hired you for.
Right. He tries to I think Bilbo tries to push back on this a little bit. And I think Thorin says something to the effect of this is what your contract is for. So you're not weaseling out of this. You're a burglar, go down and burgle something, I think is what he says. It's a weird ask of so he's going to go bring back a chalice and then do what? Do it 50,000 more times and hope Smaug won't notice? It's,
I mean, you can make an argument of okay, go get the lay of the land, confirm that where the treasure is, kind of thing. Assuming that the treasure isn't necessarily in the same spot that it was in before or something to that effect. But sure, yeah. I mean, worst case scenario, they could have some gold that they wander off with, if they all decide that they're cowards and don't want to go in there.
Right. So now we get the confrontation between Bilbo and Smaug. He goes down into the cave where Smaug is hanging out, puts on the ring to stay invisible, and they have this tete-a-tete.
Who are you and where do you come from?
I come from under the hill, and under the hill and over the hills my paths led, and through the air I am he that walks unseen.
You make riddles? What is your name?
I am the lucky number, the web cutter, the spider stinger.
Lovely title.
I am he that drowns his friends and draws them alive again from the water. I am the guest of eagles, the ring winner and luck wearer, the clue finder and the barrel rider.
Barrel rider, eh? Then I have guessed your riddle. You are one of those miserable, tub-thumping lake men. You and your town shall pay dearly for this intrusion. So the lake men would steal my treasure.
First of all, let's talk about Smaug's design. I love this design for him.
Yeah, there's a feline quality to it.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, he's this cat-like. He has more in common with a Chinese dragon than a traditional Western dragon.
Which again speaks to the animation studio being based out of Japan as opposed to the U.S. and having its own influences.
Oh yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. That's a great point. I like this scene in the Jackson version. I think Smaug's design is whatever. He's a dragon. They all look kind of the same, but I think Benedict Cumberbatch does a good job voicing him. Mm-hmm. But I do like that. I just like the dialogue in that version and in this 77 version is pretty straight out of the book.
Yep.
And this, kind of this expression of the dragon's kind of intelligence. I didn't know he was going to talk and be interesting, but he's intelligent and but also kind of arrogant. And the way this back and forth, it's not too dissimilar from the riddle battle with Gollum as Bilbo kind of steps up to him.
Yeah, those are similar scenes enough so that like it is surprising how often I've tried to remember which analogy came from which part of the conversation sometimes when reflecting back on on the two encounters. There's certainly a rhythm to Bilbo talks to something scary in the series that are most like iconically speaking the Gollum and the dragon scenarios. Like there's a certain version of that with the trolls, and there's a certain version of that with like the with like the spiders and so forth. But these two are spots where he is out of his league, and so he has to like talk his way out of the problem. And you can kind of you can feel the rhythm that like Tolkien feels very comfortable writing those kinds of dialogues.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's not as much of it in Lord of the Rings. Bilbo is much more like, I shall parley with this threat, and Frodo's a lot more of like, I shall eat shit because I must. I must endure. That's his thing.
Well, the ring is weighing heavier on him at that point.
Yeah, he's losing himself to it. But unfortunately, Bilbo here kind of trips up because he pushes it just a little too far. This whole thing about his, like, I am the ring bearer, the riddle solver, the barrel rider. He's giving out all of these honorifics, and finally, Smaug has kind of had enough. He's like, I think I know who you are. You're one of those guys from the lake town. So I'm just going to go burn that thing to the ground. See ya. Mm-hmm. And Bilbo, you realize he's like, oh, shit. I've probably shouldn't have done that.
Sorry you could not find me, but a fine burglar takes expert catching.
Burglar?
To be roasted alive.
It's the burglar!
3 cheers for good old Bilbo!
Thank you, but I'd appreciate a more pragmatic salute. In other words, extinguish me!
There we go. There we go. Always glad to help a friend.
I can't tell you how grateful I am.
Oh, never mind that. What did you burgle?
This.
Oh.
What's that?
Earthquake?
But fortunately, in the whole conversation, Bilbo had a chance to like look at the underside of the dragon, because one of the good things that he brings up is the whole like, well, dragons have soft bellies, and it's like, oh, look at me, I got all this gold on my belly. Right. It's like, there's a spot you missed, bitch.
Right. You've got a Death Star port there
that
nobody else knows about.
Many Bothans died to bring us this information.
That's right. So Bilbo takes off the ring, and Smaug, chases him out with a gout of flame, which just catches like his coattails, and he runs out of the cave back to where the dwarves are, demanding they put him out, which they do, and they ask what he burgled. But before we can really talk too much about that, there's an earthquake which is of course Smaug just escaping from the mountain to head off and start burning the shit out of Lake Town. So Bilbo tells the thrush, the bird, hey, you go tell Bard about the Death Star port on Smaug's belly. Because I guess birds can do that.
Yep. So this is a thing I was thinking about, because we know that Gandalf can talk to birds. Like, that is a consistent ability of his. Apparently Bilbo has that ability too. And so does Bard. Just apparently.
It's Middle Earth. You can have magical things. I mean, we've had talking spiders, we've had the eagles. It's just, we just have to sort of accept that this is part of the world. So it does seem weird. I agree. It's like, is there no other plot device we can use to get this message to Bard in time? But regardless, the bird tells Bard. He pulls out his special black arrow and fires it into Smaug, and Smaug is done.
Yep. Although, unfortunately, in his death, he takes out Lake Town.
Does he destroy Lake Town? Oh, he does. He does a lot of damage, right? Well,
Yeah.
He's already burned half of it, and then the giant tidal wave takes out a lot of it. Although, hey, you did build a town on a lake next to a dragon, so, you made that choice, Lake Town.
Yeah, I mean, you could have, in theory, Lake Town could have moved.
I wouldn't want to live anywhere near the Dragon Mountain. I don't know why they would stay, but anyway, the dwarves are celebrating at Lonely Mountain. They're Scrooge McDucking it up in the treasure, and they're cataloging the wealth. Hail Thorin, and Bilbo kind of goes off by himself, and he's concerned. What if Smaug comes back, and we're told it's been a week. He ain't coming back, and he says we need to see if he's really gone. So they head out and look, to the main gate there to Erebor. And they look down into the valley, and there are an enormous amount of what, from a distance, look like fireflies, but they suss out this is the torches of 2 army camps gathered at the base of the mountain.
Yep.
This design on the lake, or the opening to Erebor, the main gate, I believe the Jackson version looks pretty much like this. It's very similar in terms of design.
Yeah, I now that you say that, that makes sense. I hadn't really thought about it because it kind of just looks like a gate.
But the way the water comes through in the middle, there's the overall design aesthetic that I don't know if they borrowed it or what.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could be influential on that.
Well, Tolkien did some illustrations of his own, which they relied upon. That's why Baggins looks the way it does. It's Tolkien already gave the blueprint for that visually. So I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's was it John Howe and Alan Lee, the illustrators behind the Jackson versions, also being influenced by this. I don't know where the connection is made, but they unmistakably look a lot like each other.
Right.
All right. So Bard appears, and he tells them, "Look, there's 2 armies down there. The men of Lake Town, their army, they want money from Thorin to pay for all the damage to Lake Town, and the elves are there." And they want retribution for or recompense for their suffering at Smaug's hands as well. And Thorin does not want to share anything. And Bilbo is baffled, saying there's more than enough treasure for everybody to have some. Why not share?
Yeah, this is, ultimately things change. But, this is just Thorin creating problems for himself.
Yeah, and this is, again, I think the influence of World War I creeping in. We're going to ultimately have 5 armies duking it out. And it's this idea of all these alliances changing and going every which way. That was the cluster that led to World War I. And so I think he's trying to do a version of that here, where it's there's no reason for these people to all be fighting with each other, except maybe with the goblins when they show up. But
right.
This internecine fighting amongst the sentient races of Middle-earth is pointless. So they decide we're going to meet on the field of battle. And Bilbo's like, what are you doing? There's 13 of you. You can't do anything. But the next morning...
Conveniently,
dwarves, an army of dwarves show up because they heard about what happened. And so they're here to help. And now we've got 3 armies. And we've got the field of battle as they're trash-talking each other.
Onward! Forward! To battle!
Scurvy dwarves! Thieving dwarves! Kill them! Chop them! Take their heads!
Kill the men! Kill the elves! Save the gold for ourselves!
Personally, I'd rather be back in Hobbiton.
Who's that old man?
Get out of the way!
Move, you old fool! Old fool?
Gandalf!
Halt! I would speak with the kings. Dread has come upon you all. An army of goblins with claim to the treasure comes from the north. Behold! They ride upon wolves.
Oh, great Elf King, my truest friend and ally, we must join our forces against this common scourge.
But of course, O noble king under the mountain, your people are like brothers unto mine.
And my men and all their weapons are as one with yours. Together we will vanquish the foul foe. Together!
Thorin is correct. I simply do not understand war.
And we get these like chants and stuff that are kill the men, kill the elves, save the gold for ourselves, all that stuff. And Gandalf appears in the middle of all three of them to say, knock it off, you idiots.
There's a fourth army.
Yes. There's a pronunciation thing here. I know Gandalf says, an army of goblins with claims on the treasure. He says treasure.
On the treasure.
Like rhymes with Frasier. Like it's weird. Anyway, so yes, Gandalf finally returns to tell them to knock it off, which they do. They say, okay, forget fighting with each other. Now we've got to all band together to stop the goblins.
Yeah, so this creates a thing. So the Battle of Five Armies is a perfectly fine name for it, but it does make you think that they're all fighting each other as opposed to what is ultimately four armies against one.
Right. Yeah, agreed. It's a little weird. And Bilbo, it's usually for a protagonist to like kind of his instead of exercising agency to like win the battle or stop the battle, he decides, I'm just going to sit this one out. I'm going to put on the ring and not do anything and wait till it's over.
Which incredible props to them for having the gall to be book accurate in that regard. Considering that the Jackson movies are like, no, we can't do that. We got to have him be an active participant in this whole thing.
I understand the tension there, where it's like, again, he's your protagonist. Like to have him do nothing in the climax is weird.
Oh, I want to say I fully get the desire in the Jackson movie to make it that way, especially when it's the whole movie,
Well, and you've built up to it with, again, 8.5 hours of stuff, this is 77 minutes. You can spare 3 minutes of a shortly animated battle to do this, but when it's that much stuff, like you can't have your main character do nothing for that long. It is weird. But that's exactly what happens. It's in the book. Gandalf is he's a conscientious objector, man. He sits it out. And I'm sorry, we didn't mention our last army coming in because it looks like the goblins have them on the ropes, but the eagles arrive again to be a fifth army to.
Yeah, so really it's just two armies fighting each other with then three armies that are sitting on the sidelines, having had their shit wrecked.
And the eagles are OP because they have the advantage of gravity.
Yes.
Like watching them just lift, because you see like a cloud of them just lifting the goblins up and then dropping.
Yeah, it makes me think of Hass eagle. It's an extinct species of eagle that apparently it was an example of island gigantism where when an isolated population, like sometimes things get really, really big, or sometimes it gets really, really small. But in this case, they got really, really big. And lived on an island with flightless birds that apparently they would just like swoop down and pick up and then drop to kill them. And when humans came to the island, all of a sudden it was just like open season on humans, and so we hunted them to extension in their nests. Because like, oh dear God, can you imagine the scenario where you're just like walking around and an eagle just picks you up, flies you into the air to drop you so that you would fall to your death, and then like lands on your carcass and eats you.
Horrifying.
Like, yeah, horrifying. And this posits a world where the eagles can just do that to, unfortunately they're doing it to the bad guys, but it does present that world.
Yeah, no, it's they're an interesting faction within this world because they are OP, and so it does raise questions about how they are a plot convenience here and there. But here, of course, they're the cavalry to come in and save the day at the last minute. But saving the day at the last minute kind of comes at a big cost, because we're seeing the aftermath. Bilbo says he was, knocked on the head at some point, even though he was invisible, and he wakes up after the battle's over, and Bomber comes walking over to him, limping, and basically says, "Look, out of the 13 of us, 7 are dead, and Thorin is about to die." And so, we get the scene with Thorin on his deathbed.
Yep.
I have brought him.
Farewell, good thief.
I wish to part in friendship and would take back my words at the gate.
There are many words I would take back also.
And does it take this to make us see each other?
Thorin.
Hush. You are no coward, my friend. I am sorry I so named you.
This is not important.
And I was wrong. You did understand war. It was I who did not. Until now.
Farewell, King under the mountain.
Child of the kindly West, I have come to know if more of us valued your ways, food and cheer above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. But sad or merry, I must leave it now. Farewell.
Farewell, Thorin.
And he apologizes to Bilbo for being short-sighted and greedy. And this one line, which actually got to me, which is again from the book and in every version of this, he says, if more of us valued your ways, food and cheer above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. But sad or merry, I must leave it now. And that still resonates.
Yeah, it's a beautiful line.
It just speaks to, I think, to the extent this has a theme, that is the theme, right? Of just man, why are we fighting over all this dumb shit? So Thorin passes away, and we get kind of our denouement here. Gandalf leads Bilbo back home to Baggins, and he's got a little treasure with him. He didn't take his entire share that he was entitled to. It was more than enough for him. As we'll see, it's enough to render him the richest man in Hobbiton and a subject of intense scrutiny from everyone who lives there.
Yeah.
But this is where Gandalf lays out the divine intervention stuff of oh, really? You thought this was all for you, all this adventuring?
You take only 2 tiny bags of gold home with you? Your share was greater.
It's all my pony could carry, and it's more than I'll ever need.
But you have other prizes.
The ring? Oh, yes. I'll keep it as a souvenir, in a glass box on the mantel.
Ha! And so the prophecies of old have come true. Smog is gone, and the goblins driven away. The dwarves and elves live in peace, and the men thrive, multiply, and build a civilization.
Prophecies.
What?
I had a hand in all that.
Surely you don't disbelieve the prophecies because you helped bring them about. You don't really suppose, do you, that all your adventures and escapes were managed by mere luck, just for your sole benefit? You're a very fine person, Mr. Baggins, and I'm very fond of you. But you're only quite a little fellow in a wide world, after all.
Thank goodness.
Yes, you'll return to your home. Place your souvenir ring on your mantle. Publish your story, which you believe has come to its end.
What do you mean, believe it has come to an end? It has, hasn't it?
Oh, Bilbo Baggins, if you really understood that ring, as someday members of your family not yet born will, then you'd realize that this story has not ended, but is only beginning.
Someday, members of your family, not yet born, wink, wink, are going to have some kind of adventure with this ring. It kind of lays it on a little thick.
And this prologue to a bigger story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it ends with a shot of the ring, in a glass case on the mantelpiece, and it's got this, glowing lens flare to it of, it's done in a way that's very, peaceful, as opposed to, what should be, this thing is fucking evil.
Yeah. This movie, because it is fairly faithful to the book, just doesn't have that ominous nature that the later stuff would have.
Yeah, we at no point should you ever, that's the thing is, for here, in this story, the ring is whimsical. It's oh, what a fun magical doodad. And even at the end, I knew when I saw this that Lord of the Rings existed, that there was a story about it. But this made it still sound like it was like, oh, cool, magic ring, as opposed to like, oh no, that's Satan on your finger.
Right.
Yeah. But that brings us to the end of the animated Hobbit, and man, I'm glad we spent the time to talk about this. I'm glad we're including this in Frodovember. But Case, tell me, why do you think it is that this, we now have the Jackson Hobbit, but I think this version is oddly enough, still very much vital and will endure. Tell me about your kind of closing thoughts on it.
Well, for starters, who wants to revisit the Jackson Hobbit? Like, I like those movies overall, but like it is so much energy to like go back, especially with just the length of them all. So there is that. This is a movie that had such an interesting time and place, and for a while was like the best of what we could get of Tolkien material on the big screen. Like The Lord of the Rings and The Return of the King are both interesting things that you should see, but like I don't really like Return of the King, and Lord of the Rings is interesting but incomplete. So it look, for a long time this was like your best Tolkien adaptation, and so there's that. It's pretty faithful. It's weird looking in a good way. So I think that's a detail that is going to really grab people. The music is catchy, it's earwormy, but it's not overwhelming. Like, again, the Return of the King animated movie is just like, oh my god, it's too much. This one's good. The music is fine and nice, and it tells the story, and it moves quickly, and like it's brisk. So if you want to watch it, that's fine. This episode of this podcast is longer than the movie.
Agreed. Yeah, you're right.
Like, us just saying what they did took us longer for us to get through than it did for them to like just rush through that movie, because it is fast. They have no issue with just like smash cutting between like big scenes, just so that we can just like keep it moving. Come on, guys, like you gotta move like the wargs are chasing you, and that's a cool part about it all. Like that, it's an experience with cool designs. They're weird looking. The animation's pretty good, but like I said, the designs actually like really carry it. Music's pretty good. Performances are pretty good. It's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I think it is for cut down and abridged as it is. It's very faithful. I think at some point I found a quote from Rankin who said, we didn't add anything. All we did was pare things down, but we didn't change anything. And it is shockingly faithful. In fact, I would feel like the best thing you could do to the Peter Jackson one is come up with a fan edit that basically pares it down to something like this, and you might really have something. This is a great version of the story, and the fact that the pacing is so brisk. Not only is that great, but the best scenes in it, right? They do take the time to slow down for Gollum and for Smaug, and to let those play out the way they do in the book. Like, they understand those need to work, and because of that, like the whole thing really kind of hangs on those two scenes in a lot of ways. And it perfectly comes together.
But you would also argue that the series as a whole, like when you look back on The Hobbit, what are the two valuable moments in The Hobbit? The two valuable moments are the scene where he becomes the ring bearer, and the ultimate confrontation with the dragon that was potentially an ally of Sauron.
Yeah, that's the retcon they do. Is like if Sauron were to get his hands on Smaug and ally with him, yeah, that's like, well, now it's game over. He's got a thermonuclear weapon,
right?
In addition to the ring and everything else. So, but yeah, Case, thanks again for coming by to talk about The Hobbit as part of Frodovember. This was a treat, as always, having you on. Once again, if people want to find your stuff, where do they go?
Yeah, so if people enjoyed this episode and they want to check out the stuff that I do, I host two podcasts. One is Men of Steel, which is a Superman and Superman adjacent love letter that I co-host with J. Mike Folson. And the other podcast is Another Pass, which is a movie analysis show that I co-host with Sam Alisea. Both of those are part of the Certain POV podcast network, and can be found, if you're looking for a video version of that, on the YouTube channel for Certain POV Media, where you can find that, plus all kinds of videos and stuff that I do. It's pretty much just me putting stuff on that YouTube channel. So check that out. That's a good one-stop shop for my stuff. And I'm going to plug this just because podcast recording time, we just launched it this weekend, but we actually did just launch a Patreon for Certain POV Media, which is supporting the shows that I produce directly. So check that out at Certain POV Media, or patreon.com/Certain POV Media. So check that out. Would love to have you. We're at the moment, I'm very jazzed about it, but when this episode comes out, it will be months from now, and we'll see how much stuff I have. But at the moment, I have a good clip of, I've written several original essays for it, and we're setting up all kinds of cool stuff for people who want to check it out. So that's a cool place. Yay.
Yeah, I was going to mention your Patreon if you hadn't. So definitely go check that out. Support Case and the podcast network. If you want to find us, of course, you can just Google up Nostalgium, and that name will take you to wherever we are on the social media pages. There's links to all of those in the show notes if you want to get in touch with us there. I also have to mention that by the time you're hearing this, we have launched a second podcast here. You can go listen to Playing by Ear, which is a show that I do with my wife and my brother-in-law, where each episode we take an album and work our way through it track by track, and analyze it, give it a grade, and go as in depth as we can on some great music. So go find that as well.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's going to be the plan for now. Again, recording now for a show in the future, but it's going to be a monthly show. So go find that. And then let's see. Oh, of course, if you have time and are so inclined, please do drop a review for the show or Case's show. Wherever you find your podcast. Podcasters do love it so much when you drop those reviews, not just because it stokes our ego, but because it actually has a tangible effect on the algorithm and helps people find the podcast. And of course, word of mouth is always desired as well. If you want to know what's coming up next, well, now you know, because you know what this month is all about. But generally, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or BlueSky, because every Wednesday I post a clue as to what the next episode is going to be. Again, this is Frodovember, and you can probably have a hunch about what might be lying ahead in December, but yeah, that's the place to go to play along with that. So, Case, man, thanks again. We've gone there and back again, finally. So,
yes.
Thanks again for doing this.
It was an incredible journey.
It's so much desolation. An unexpected journey, right? Is that what
was it? Unexpected? I thought, yeah.
Homeward Bound is the incredible journey.
Yeah, you're right.
All right. Well,
Shadow.
No. Go back to the shadow. So on that note, we'll see you next time for Fellowship of the Ring, and until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcanum.
In the middle of the earth, in the land of Shire, lives a brave little hobbit whom we all admire. With his long wooden pipe, fuzzy woolly toes, he lives in a hobbit hole and everybody knows him. Bilbo, Bilbo Baggins, he's only 3 feet tall. Bilbo, Bilbo Baggins, the bravest little hobbit of them all. Hobbits are peace-loving folks, you know. They're never in a hurry and they take things slow. They don't like to travel away from home. They just like to eat and be left alone. But one day Bilbo was asked to go on a big adventure to the cape.
What is it? Oh!
Sting! Sting! Sting!
Retreat! We are no match for Sting!